Hi folks. So my Christmas dreams came true. I got this book for Christmas, Modern Bonsai Practice, 501 Principles of Good Bonsai Horticulture by Larry Morton. And I've been shocked by what I've read in this book. So I wanted to do this video about it because I found this book so interesting and shocking. So if you like, controversy, bonsai controversy, if you're one of those people who, enjoys a bonsai nut and people arguing about how to do bonsai, you might like this book. It also might offend you and upset you. First, an overview of what's in the book. So as promised, as it says, it has 501 principles, horticultural principles, especially as they relate to bonsai. What I like about how the book is laid out is that these principles are in bold and they're numbered, each principle, so you can easily find them in the text. And then the text surrounding them explains them more in detail. But if you wanted to do a quick just skim through the book to get the major points, those 501 points, you could do that easily. What's also nice about this is he has in brown like myths and misconceptions, common misconceptions. And so those are also easily identified in the text. So I like that. The book, it's not an easy read. And I'm not saying that as an insult to the book. I think it's a great book. I say it's not easy because it's it looks like a textbook and it reads like a textbook. So it's very dense in information, but full of information. And he's a very succinct writer, which I appreciate, like a technical writer. But yeah, it's just really dense. So that's why I say it's not an easy read. Who would I recommend it for? It's not really a beginner book. It kind of assumes that you already know many of the basics. But that being said, even beginners, even if you have just a little bit of knowledge about bonsai and been doing bonsai for a little bit, you could definitely get a lot out of this book. And I think even intermediate experienced bonsai folks who don't maybe have a background in horticulture would really find a lot of information in this book. Now I want to talk about the shocking parts, because like I said, it's been eye-opening and I don't know what to believe anymore. So here's a few of those I want to go over. I made a list here. Page number 28. He says, sifting soil. Many of us have sifted our soil now for years, probably because you want to remove that dust in the soil, all those fines. You only want big particle sizes because you don't want that to clog up your substrate. You want a good flow of water and oxygen through the substrate. Well, he says in this book, he says many substrates that are sold today, they come in, I get mine in bags, right? So very artificial. He says the sifting of soil, that comes from way back when people were actually going out to the field, to a mountain to get gravel, and they sifted out the fines. He says most bonsai aggregates these days are already pre-sifted, and it's probably fine. You don't need to sift your aggregate. A little bit of fines in your aggregate isn't gonna probably affect your plant growth. So that was big. It's like, wow, so maybe I don't need to sift my soil. That's number one. Number two, I wanted to talk about this one because it's maybe one of my pet peeves or something I just don't get. I might offend some people with this, so I'm just going to say it. And, if you use akadama, that's fine, first. And I'll say too, akadama has been proven by many people. It works great as a bonsai aggregate. I'm not trying to say it doesn't. But I do appreciate how he says, in this book, and maybe I'll just read it here, actually, it's on page 34. He says, you don't need akadama. So I've always found it weird. This is just me reasoning. I know I don't, I'm not an expert in bonsai, obviously, but I'm a human who can reason for themselves. And I don't get the weird obsession with akadama that people have. I think if you're in Asia and you have easy access to it and it's cheap, obviously, use akadama. But if you're in North America, we got a lot of rocks here, especially Western North America, the Rocky Mountains. We have all sorts of aggregates here that are close. And so I don't know why people spend large sums of money to have, a volcanic aggregate that occurs in Asia, shipped all the way over here, and using it for their bonsai like it's magical. And of course, again, it has great properties for bonsai, but I don't know why we're doing it. And I'll just read from the book here. I just liked it. He says, Dr. Ross Clark, botanist, puts it in practical terms. Since so many soil mixes work, and since there's a very wide variety of rock and soil in North America, there's no need to import special soil mixes or ingredients from other continents. Enough about my akadama rant. This one was big too. So lime sulfur. I've heard a lot that lime sulfur, helps preserve dead wood, and it can even be used as something to prevent disease. Well, he says right on page 132, lime sulfur doesn't preserve wood, and it doesn't prevent disease. It simply bleaches the wood, which it's still useful, obviously, if people like their dead wood white often. Sometimes I think it's overused and it looks like crazy white, but it doesn't preserve wood, doesn't prevent disease. So, huge. This one, page 140, Cutpaste. You don't need it. That's way against what I've seen a lot of. He says, the best Cutpaste for a pine is pine sap. Best Cutpaste for a maple is just, the maple sap that bleeds out of maples. And, a lot of it makes sense to me. That's what the tree is designed over eons or whatever to use to heal itself. So why does an artificial thing work better than what's natural? I don't know. I'm just repeating what I'm learning in this book. Okay, I did a video about this next one. I talked about how you need to scrub the base of your bonsai tree or else moss will eat away at the bark. And I feel like maybe that's happened. But according to Larry Morton, moss and lichen on a tree trunk do not deteriorate that tree trunk. And maybe just saying it's not the moss, but it's just it's the moisture or disease at the base that's associated with the moss. I don't know. And then lastly, I'll go with this one. He talks about how all bonsai need light in the winter. I was under the impression that a deciduous tree, when it's dormant, it doesn't have leaves, it doesn't photosynthesize. Well, he says, trees photosynthesize through their bark, on their bark. Even deciduous trees in the winter. When temperatures are warm enough. I think when it gets super cold, I'm still putting my trees in shelter, of course, because I don't think much photosynthesis is happening at like 20 degrees Fahrenheit. But, above freezing maybe, and it's a good idea to get those trees out of storage, get them in light. And that just makes sense to me too, that you don't want to keep your trees that have evolved to be out in the open air year-round, all the time. I don't think you do want to keep them in the dark all the time. Anyways, that's just a few of the things that are controversial to me. They're just news to me, and it's full of stuff like that. So I recommend checking it out if you're interested in horticulture, especially, and if you're doing the best for your trees. Okay, so here's some of my takeaways from this book. What I've found now, just reading this book, and there's another book, Bonsai Heresy by Michael Hagedorn, and with these two books, the recent publications, I think one big takeaway that I've learned is that there seems to be a divide between horticulturalists and bonsai tradition. There seems to be disagreement. Who's right? I don't know. I don't know if Larry has everything right. I'm not sure. I'm just a guy in my backyard doing bonsai. So related to that, number two is, since there is this divide, it is worth, questioning what you have read or heard on YouTube from even authorities, bonsai authorities. What's the right thing to do? But I do like that in this book he talks about principles. They're just very general ideas, and so you need to adapt them, of course, to your bonsai practice. Number three, lastly, on this, I think because there is this difference between horticulture and bonsai tradition, a lot of people, though, that have been doing it the bonsai way, maybe not the most horticulturally sound way, they're still succeeding. And so I think there's a large margin for error. That's my number three point. That even if you're not doing everything completely right, you can still succeed. I think plants are tough and adaptable. That's one thing I love about trees. They can live for hundreds, thousands of years, and they adapt. So they can adapt to your bad horticultural practices. That being said, you can maybe give yourself a leg up if you start, adhering to more sound horticulture. Anyways, that's my rant about this book. It's a great book. I don't know what to believe, but I think probably a lot of it is sound information, but maybe something you want to check out, especially if you want to up your bonsai game in terms of horticulture. All right, until next time, happy bonsai.